Welcome to this Whole Life Action Hour. I'm Ocean Robbins, your host, and we are here today to talk about how you make healthy changes stick. Why do so many of us struggle, not just with knowing what to do, but with doing what we know? Why are good habits sometimes so hard to execute? I mean, if all that was needed was we just knew we needed to eat more vegetables and less sugar and processed junk in order to create lasting change, we wouldn't have an obesity epidemic. But unfortunately, it takes a lot more than knowledge to create action. And it turns out that behavior change is its very own skill to learn. And that's why we're here today with behavior change expert, health coach, and best-selling author, Howard Jacobson, PhD. Howard is a coach. He helps people identify their goals and take steps to achieve them. So we're going to talk about how to let go of resistance, how to overcome obstacles, how to apply basic principles of human psychology to help you stay on track even when motivation or willpower wane. Now, I want to be very clear, nothing you hear today is medical advice. This is coaching. We're sharing our own best insights, but of course, always consult with a qualified healthcare professional about your specific nutritional issues and medical needs. That said, you're going to learn a lot today. This is a project of Whole Life Club, which is Food Revolution Network's membership community. Some of the questions that I will be bringing to this interview come from our Whole Life Club members. Now, we are here today with Howard Jacobson, who is, as I mentioned, an executive coach, a health coach, and a best-selling author. His books include You Can Change Other People, amazing book written with Peter Bregman. He also wrote Sick to Fit and Whole with amazing co-author Dr. T. Colin Campbell, and Proteinaholic, which he wrote with Garth Davis, MD. He hosts the Plant Yourself podcast, and he trains health coaches at the WellStart Health Coaching Academy. He also helps with a lot of the writing that Food Revolution Network produces. So if you've seen our blog articles and you've ever laughed at them, a lot of the jokes come from Howard. He is a funny guy. Howard, welcome. So good to be with you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure, Ocean. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
All right. Well, let's just jump right in here. Christine said, I'd love some ideas for motivation to restart and maintain an exercise regimen. So how do people get that going? They want to move. They know it's good for them. What are some tips?
Yeah, so motivation it's a great place to start, because obviously we need motivation in order to do anything. And in our culture, we misplace a lot of our attention and energy into motivation when it's usually not the problem. So just when Christina, did you say?
Christine, yeah.
Christine asks, how can I get motivated? The very fact that she's asking the question means that she's motivated, right? She wants to do it. The problem isn't that she's like, I don't want to do this. Right? I mean, she understands it's good for me to do this. I'll feel better when I do it. But in the moment, there's something else in the way. So I want to distinguish between a motivation problem and a follow-through problem. So the motivation problem is I don't want to do it. And that's almost never the real issue. Because if we talk to Christine and we say, well, what caused you to ask the question? She would tell us, like, what are your goals? What do you want to accomplish? What do you want to have in your life that you think exercise? She'll talk about that and she'll get pretty excited. But then when the alarm goes off at 6 a.m. and she has to get up and get on the Peloton or go for a walk or, go to the gym or go jogging or whatever, then there's all sorts of countervailing forces.
Yeah.
So the thing to solve for is not, I wish I was more motivated, because then what we would do, if we think the problem is motivation, we would say, come on, you can do this. You want to make a vision board, put a picture of yourself, put that, size 4 pantsuit or bikini or whatever on the board and, until you get it. But in the moment, what we want to do is create a scenario where it's more likely than not that in that moment, Christine is going to get up and do the thing she said she was going to do. So we can think about this a whole bunch of ways. One is, let's start by making it smaller. And by the way, I was going back I interviewed you on my podcast. I think it was in 2013. And I just recently looked at the transcript, and I would say about 90% of what I teach, you said in that podcast. So I think I haven't been giving you enough credit over the years, like
great minds run in the same gutters.
Yeah. Or I just, vacuumed up a lot of your wisdom and have been packaging it as my own ever since. But like, let's make it smaller. Like you may not be, we have this idea that what something looks like, what a whole food plant-based diet looks like, what exercise looks like. And it's usually pretty big and comprehensive. And so I'd say to Christine, like, what does exercise look like? Oh, it's an hour on the elliptical. And I'm not doing, that's what I'm not doing. Instead, well, what if we said it's a 5-minute walk on a treadmill, or a 2-minute yoga routine, or like whatever it is, plant the seed, right? I think, you and I are both gardeners. We don't plant trees, we plant seedlings, or we plant, little shoots. We plant small things. And if we plant them in the right place and take care of them, then they grow.
Yes.
So I'd say the most important thing is think of something that you're confident you're going to do that's going to move you towards your ultimate goal, and start doing that. Let that get a foothold, and then it can grow.
Yeah, I'm thinking about when I wanted to, I was a runner when I was a kid. And then a couple of years ago, I decided to get back into it. And I was amazed, like part of me remembered body memory wise how to do everything, the breathing patterns, the foot patterns, everything. But I was in a much older body, like bigger body. I wasn't a kid anymore. And there's a lot more weight to carry around. And I found it hard. And what I had to do was to start really small. Like the first time out, I tried to run like 2 miles, and I was super sore for like 4 days afterwards. So then I was like, well, what could I do that would just be sustainable? So I started running, like 5 minutes my first day, and then 6 minutes, and then slowly building. And it's hard to argue that you don't have time for 5 minutes, life gets really busy, but usually we can fit in 5 minutes. So those really bite-sized chunks become habituated. And then it got easier. And suddenly 10 minutes didn't feel hard because I had built up to it. But it's amazing how slow I had to go. When I was a kid, I could just run out there. I mean, I ran a marathon, but now it was much harder. And so we can lose patience, I think, with that process. But the key is those bite-sized chunks, right? So as opposed with an exercise regimen, one of the other things is to have something that's easily accessible. Like if you have to drive across town to a gym and there's traffic and it's going to take 3 hours round trip, that's going to be a problem for a lot of people. So something you can do easily, ideally something that's either right out the door. And also I would say peer support is helpful, wouldn't you say? Like, what's the role of having accountability and having camaraderie around exercise?
Yeah. So in general, like we kind of know all this stuff, but we don't necessarily apply it to ourselves in the moment. So one of the questions I sometimes ask my clients is, if you wanted to make it harder, if you wanted to make it less likely that you would do this, what would you do? Well, I would do it alone. I would do it, at night. I would lock my sneakers in a closet somewhere and I'd have to climb up and get them. I said, great. So what's the opposite of that? Make it accessible, make it fun, make it attractive, make it easy, make it social, right? So, these are very sort of basic fundamental strategies, but there's like this idea that it's got to be hard. Mm-hmm. Like if it's not hard, it's not worth it.
No pain, no gain.
Right. Yeah. And, and there's a place for that. If you're training for your marathon, you are going to have some runs that are going to suck.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. But there's also a joy to that you're choosing it. So at the beginning of the curve, make it as easy and fun and accessible as possible. Mm-hmm. Get yourself positively addicted. And you were talking about like, if it's closer, I just saw a study, I think it was done by Katie Milkman out of the University of Pennsylvania, looking at gym attendance based on distance from the gym.
Mhm.
And there was apparently a huge difference, like a big drop off if people were 2.8 miles away from their gym versus like 3 miles. Like, like that extra
Fascinating.
30 seconds or 1 minute of driving seemed to make a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something else with exercise specifically. I think about it being fun. Like, I mean, sometimes you do it just because you do it, just because it's good for you. But in my experience for myself, the exercise that I love is something that I actually look forward to. Like it's a highlight rather than a drudgery in my day. Now, sometimes you can stick with drudgery because you just get habits. I mean, I don't know anybody who loves brushing their teeth, but I know a lot of people who brush their teeth every day because
Yeah.
it's so habituated. We just do it. You just can't go to bed without doing it, you know? At least I can't. But I think that exercise can be something that actually lights you up, like when you feel more alive and more joyous. And so for me, my big one was in the last couple of years, I discovered racquetball, and we live around the corner from a racquetball court. So I just love playing, and I like, sure, I'm pouring sweat and I'm super, my cardio's up, but that's not my goal. My goal is to win that game, and so, that can be really fun. Or ecstatic dance is another one I love. Working out with my dad, we work out together, and I never work out alone, but when we're together, it's like, it's so fun, like just to like cheer each other on and hang out, and, and over time have personal records and kind of push each other. And it's like the personal record's a lot more fun when someone's there to watch.
Mhm.
Otherwise, you could just make it up. You could be like, oh, I did 10, who's going to know, right? But when you've actually got someone there who knows, oh, wow, that's the best you've ever done at that. That's a big deal, or you're getting back in shape. That's exciting, like just feeling that it builds a lot of momentum.
Yeah, and it's a foundation for other things. Like I was doing an online workout with two other guys 3 mornings a week, and then they stopped doing it. And I was like, oh, I'll just keep doing it on my own. And it's like, oh, like it's way harder. And there's some mornings that I don't do it, but there's other mornings where I'm like, you know what? This is me when no one's watching. And I can sort of take pride in that. But it took a year of building the habit and building the muscle memory and the joy. And like, absolutely, this should all be joyful. We're talking about like nourishing our bodies, about moving. Like if we're ensconced in this diet culture. It's kind of like everything that's good for you is fattening or illegal. And so we have to flagellate ourselves in order to be healthy. And the truth is, people who follow you and like, no, like we're doing this for fun. We're doing this for joy. When we are involved in activism for the planet, we're doing it because it feels good. There's something inherently selfish about doing the right thing and being around people who are supporting us. It just feels really good.
It does. It really does. And this ties to another piece, which is around food and pleasure. So, I'm not going to lie. I think donuts taste better than kale, and I think kale is a learned enjoyment, and it can be learned, and healthy food we can learn to love foods that love us back. But there's no doubt that there's an appeal to the at least short-term sensory sensation that a lot of people get from hyper-processed foods and animal products and salty foods. And so for the part of the brain that feels like healthy eating is deprivation, that feels like we are somehow giving up our enjoyment and even self-love, like we associate pleasure with caring for ourselves. I'm gonna comfort myself with comfort food. I'm gonna celebrate with birthday cake or chocolate or something not so healthy, right? So how do you address that so that we can actually create healthy habits that feel good?
Yeah, well, one of them is simply around time. Like I think one of the goals of life should be to maximize our joy in life. So if you tell me that eating donuts makes you a happier person, then you should keep eating donuts, right? But if we say, like, when you look, and there are people for whom their relationship with junk food or, hyper processed food is fine. Like, birthday cake 4 times a year, that enhances my pleasure in life, and I don't need it more than that. And when I'm not eating it, I'm not obsessing over it. Cool. Then it's between, you and your gut and your ethics and all that. But when most people talk about the foods that give them pleasure, they're actually talking about the foods that make them miserable when they're not eating them. Right?
Yeah,
Because
that's right.
I feel bad, I feel bloated, I'm brain fog, fatigued, I'm heavier than I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not trying to argue with anyone that you should give up pleasure. I'm arguing you should have more pleasure. And so to understand that the foods that we have these days that are created by an industry that's based on profit and doesn't care about us has hijacked certain brain signals.
Mm-hmm.
Are people going to be watching this on video? So we can do a little graphic demo.
Yeah, we got video here.
Okay, so this is my smartphone. It's an iPhone 8. And when I push the button, nothing happens because I keep it turned off, because I'm addicted to it. When it's here, you and I are having a conversation, my mind will go to, I wonder if I got any emails, and I can just thumb it on, and then I don't even have to look. I know exactly where the email app is, and then I'm sort of glancing over and checking. And meanwhile, we're having a conversation, but and then you say something interesting and I miss it. And now I have to, and that was happening all the time. I was having trouble reading scientific papers.
Mm-hmm.
It was just this constant little dopamine thing. Now, is my smartphone one of the great inventions ever in the world? Absolutely. Do I use it for when I'm lost and I need a map, when I need to call a Lyft, when someone needs to get in touch with me about something on the shopping list? It's fantastic. And I need to set up boundaries to protect myself from it.
Yeah.
So I keep it off unless I need it, and then I turn it on and I use it for its intended purpose, and then I turn it off because I am not strong enough to, with all my knowledge of behavior. One of the things I know is that I'm very naive when it comes to the power of mind-altering substances, which includes the cell phone, which includes sugar, concentrated fat, flavorings. So understanding that, I create rules and boundaries for myself so that I can live a fully happy life.
Yeah, fabulous. I appreciate that. I think there's more pleasure long-term in healthy habits and having vitality, having joy, having energy, having mental clarity, having a bounce in your step than there is in short-term tastes that leave you feeling fatigued and miserable, much less sick. I don't know anybody who thinks cancer is pleasurable, or chemo, right? And so we see all this, and at the same time, the brain short-term, can struggle with those dynamics because dopamine hits are powerful things. How do you rewire your brain in the short to like not have those cravings or to crave good things?
Right. Well, so let's say you can't get rid of the cravings. So, which is not true in all cases, but let's just say you can't get rid of the cravings. You can still live a full, happy life having cravings and not giving into them. Cravings tend to be short-term. They're easy to distract ourselves from. Like if you're hungry, if you're really hungry and you don't eat for 20 minutes, you're going to get hungrier. If you're jonesing for chocolate and you don't have it for 20 minutes and you eat a salad and then you go off and you have a fun conversation with someone, you will forget about the chocolate. So the ability to surf cravings is very important because, it's the same reason we meditate. So I sit and meditate and 3 seconds in, I have the most awful itch on my nose, like unbearable. It wasn't there 3 seconds ago, but now it must be eczema. It's terrible. And I sit there and I just experience it and I don't indulge it. And that's called self-control, which is a really useful thing to have in our lives. Now, in terms of rewiring, there's really good, interesting new evidence around what dopamine does. It's kind of like a seesaw. And a lot of this comes from a book, Dopamine Nation, that was published this year by Anna Lemke.
Mm-hmm.
Around that, when you have a dopamine hit, your body quickly then compensates by going into a dopamine trough. And so if you eat a cookie, you get the hit, you feel really good. And then like 2 minutes later, you start to feel bad again. And we interpret that as, oh, let's have the second cookie. Now, the second cookie never tastes as good as the first cookie, right? The first bite is like, woohoo. But after, like no one's happy at the end of the third sleeve of Oreos. No one is doing that because it's joyful. They're just trying to get out of the trough. Yeah. So if we can, one of the things we can do is put ourselves on purpose into a little bit of a trough, and then we get a kind of a euphoric bounce back. So like when you're doing your exercise, when you're working out with your dad, you're having fun, at a certain point, you're going to push yourself a little bit harder, and it's going to kind of not feel great. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, the muscles, or, oh, I'm breathing too hard now. And being willing to put yourself in that situation tells your body that you're okay with stress, that you're okay not, and then you get a bounce back. And afterwards, tell me your experience, but after a workout, you're like, I feel so good now.
Yeah.
It's pride, it's accomplishment, but it's also the neurophysiology of you deprive yourself of dopamine, and then it gives you it compensates by making you happy.
Yeah, interesting. Well, there's also blood flow. There's also, I think even in response to the pain of the workout, the body produces chemicals that are pleasurable that help us cope with that, right? So there's, there's a lot to it. But there's also a feeling that, wow, I met a challenge and I survived, and there's a relief in that, right?
Yeah.
Our self-image changes from weak to strong. Because if you can meet adversity and overcome it or keep going, then you feel more confident in yourself, don't you?
Well, that's, when we started out by talking about motivation, dopamine is the cornerstone of the motivation system. And it's not like rah-rah motivation, but it's just what makes us pursue good things. And so dopamine, like all those things you're talking about are happening. The blood flow, the endorphins being released. But the dopamine is it's the camera that takes a snapshot of all that and says, remember this, because this is good. This is getting you where you want to go. So next time you're going to do it again. The same way, like if our ancestors were wandering around and we came across an orchard of ripe fruit and we would just gorge ourselves on this delicious, sweet fruit, the dopamine system would say, remember where this is and remember what time of year, so that you're more likely to find it again. So dopamine is essentially saying, oh, this is good. Remember this.
Yeah. So
if we're getting dopamine from donuts, we're going to have cravings because that's how our bodies were designed, that they're working perfectly. So if we can create scenarios where we're getting dopamine in pursuit of worthy goals, in alignment with our values, then we're essentially hacking the system for our own benefit.
Yeah. I'm thinking that with any new skill, dopamine is a part of the development of that skill. Like if you're learning to play an instrument and you hit the note right and it sounds good, there's a little dopamine hit that says, oh, that felt good, that sounded good. And the next time it's actually easier to do it again because you know right from wrong, because you know good from bad, because you've actually gotten a little reward in the brain. Or same thing if you're playing racquetball and you hit a great shot, the ball is going somewhere far away from your body. How the heck do you learn how to twist your wrist at that exact moment in just the right way to make the ball go where you want it to go, except that you get the feedback from watching the ball, seeing where it lands on the wall, and your brain goes, yes, that was a good shot. And then you remember and associate that, and then it all plays out on a very subconscious level. So I'm thinking that skill development is linked to all of this, but I'm also thinking that cooking, which I want to get into now, a little bit, talk about food, is a skill that a lot of people are frustrated. They're trying a new way of eating and they feel overwhelmed, and it takes so long, and it's, doesn't even taste great the first time or 2 or 10. But the truth is that that's a skill, isn't it? Like if you develop it, you get faster, you get better, you get more confident, and it gets easier, and you actually develop strength. So part of the key to a healthy habit is developing a confidence and a competency, which comes with practice, right?
Right. And it also comes from, like, you learned how to hit your good racquetball shots also by hitting tons of bad shots. Right. And because you're playing a game, you're not judging yourself or beating yourself up. Right. You're just like, oh, that one went into the ground, or that one hit the side wall before the front wall and it didn't do what I wanted it to do.
Yeah.
And when you're in an open, creative space, when you feel safe, that's all learning. When you're feeling judged, and whether that's by someone else or by yourself. So if you come into the kitchen with this narrative of, oh, I'm terrible at this. And, oh, see, I didn't even open the can right. I had to turn, like, you ever open a can and, like, it doesn't quite open and you got to, like, go, like, and someone could who's new to the kitchen could interpret that as, I'll never be good at this. And so no, learning doesn't take place when you feel unsafe. So again, back to those small little steps, like, if all you know how to do is boil potatoes, then just boil some potatoes and boil them well, and be okay with where you are, and practice getting excited about learning. Think about all the things in your life that you can do now that you couldn't do when you were born.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty long list. And they're pretty impressive. There's going to be career-related skills, interpersonal skills, hand-eye skills, all sorts of things you can do that you couldn't have done once. And you're still that same person. And, so let failures be like missing a shot in racquetball. So, oh, okay, lost that point. Let's try again.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move to some more questions. Miriam asked, what are your thoughts about food addiction? Is it real? And if so, can a food addict learn intuitive eating?
I don't know what real means. Like, all I know about food is, like, really is my own experience, and it's very different from other people's experiences. So I would never argue that someone else's experience wasn't real.
Yeah.
In practical terms, so it can't be a food addiction because we need it to live. That's like saying, Ocean, what are you going to do about your oxygen addiction?
Right.
So what we can say is that there are food-like substances that are engineered to be addictive. And if those are things that you need to avoid 100%, like we're talking about, having birthday cake 4 times a year. I know people who can't do that, because the minute they have one, now all they can think about, their physiology changes, their gut microbiome presumably changes, and they're, having, rallies inside the large intestines for more sugar. Right. So I would say, sort of, instead of worrying about, is this a thing? Like, when you're asking, is it real? What I hear under that question is, am I normal? And none of us is normal. We're all unique, and figure out what works for you. If you find that certain foods trigger you, make you miserable, even if everyone else is around you is saying, hey, moderation, you figure out for yourself what works for you. And if you decide, my strategy here is 0 tolerance for X food, then embrace that. Don't feel like there's something wrong with you, or don't feel like there's something wrong with the person next to you who can have birthday cake 4 times a year, or a piece of dark chocolate once a week.
Yeah.
Like, our experience should not invalidate anyone else's experience.
One of my dear friends and Food Revolution Network's close partners is Susan Pierce Thompson, a neuroscientist who wrote the book Bright Line Eating. And she's really kind of cracked the code on how to help people get food freedom, people who feel trapped in cycles of addiction and cravings and compulsion. And her work's fascinating and brilliant, and it works. So for anybody, the book Bright Line Eating is an incredible resource, or you can go to her website or Google Susan Pierce Thompson. Lots of great resources online, but that's a really powerful ally to anybody who's wanting to get free when it comes to food. Beverly asked, any suggestions if your spouse is totally turned off by anything vaguely suggestive of health food? who says he wants to eat healthy, but hates so much focus on it as opposed to eating the good stuff, despite having increasing health problems. He trusts his conventional doctors who give out medications like Halloween treats and tell him to drink milk, etc. I love him and want to keep him and myself healthy.
Great. It's a great question. And there's so many different aspects of it. And what we're not going to be able to do is convince him that he's wrong and that his doctors are wrong. Right. So I would say, let's use the energy, the positive energy that he's given us, which is he says he wants to eat healthy. So let's begin with curiosity. Say, great, I would love to help you eat healthy. What does that look like for you? What do you know? What would you like to eat that would be healthy? And how will you know? Like, how will you decide? And so, when I'm coaching someone, I never, ever want to be in the business of convincing them of anything, because I have reality on my side. So all I want to do is sort of help them develop a friendly, productive relationship with reality, right? So you can ask like, so your doctors say X, and they're willing to continue medicating you. Is that what you want? Right? Maybe the person who's asking the question was on medications and got off them through diet. So like, this is a different path, whatever, so really respecting their autonomy and being really curious and empathetic so that they don't feel like they're pushed into a corner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that unconditional love is really key here. When we get into a power struggle with a partner, then winning the power struggle becomes the thing. And, if they have their dignity and their self-respect and their self-determination in the relationship becomes the issue, right? And if you're trying to win, then of course, that's where you're hooked too. But as you say, Howard, if we can give true respect to people's autonomy and then just be an ally to their discovery of reality, wherever that leads, that can be awesome. And it seems to me that some combination of unconditional love, inhuman patience, and steady adherence to our own core values, so we practice what we preach and we model it, is often the most we can do. And at the same time, if you have a partner who is eating in a way that you are worried about and it's impacting you, for example, saying, I'm worried, I'm going to take care of you. I don't want to live my last 10 years of life alone, and I don't want to live 10 years before that taking care of an invalid. Like, I want us to thrive together and have health together and vitality together. It's selfish here. That's what I want. I want you well as my partner for the rest of our lives together. I'm concerned about the path you're on right now with food. Like that kind of a thing can touch someone's heart and they can feel the love in it, rather than, would you stop eating that junk food because you should do better and you should know better, and I wish you just listen to me because I always told you,
Right. And the two both come from the same place, whether you're being the judge, the critic, or the loving ally. Mm-hmm. It's just the second, being the judge, it feels better in the moment. It's like eating a cookie because now we're in control. When I'm angry at you, when I'm telling you what to do, I feel like I have some control, even though I don't. And paradoxically, when I'm vulnerable, and I love, you said it so beautifully, like, I'm scared. I don't want this for myself. I love you. I'm worried about you. I'm worried about my own future. That's a place of vulnerability. Mm-hmm. And so to be real and to be vulnerable. And the other thing I would say to sort of raise you on that is, if there has been acrimony in the past about this, to own it, mm-hmm. to say, I've been, I got into this and, I got a little bit, zealous about it. And I think there are ways that I've spoken to you that have really, you've resented, mm-hmm. and I've been heavy-handed, and I really want to apologize. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, just own whatever you can own, because your partner is going to need to be tremendously vulnerable in order to change. in order to say, okay, I'll try something new, or I was wrong, or I'm going to give up a little bit of my autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
And by you leading with your own vulnerability, you create a space in which that's more likely to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Nova said, as an 81-year-old woman with low thyroid, osteoporosis, and lactose intolerance, how can I learn a healthy vegetarian, nutritious way to eat?
So I would say, I mean, most of that is a question for nutritional experts who can guide you. But what I would encourage Nova to do is, like, all of us have a list of things that are going to get in our way. Right. I have reasons too. Like, I was C-section formula fed. So I have a terrible microbiome. It's never going to get any better. I have a spina bifida occulta from birth. So I have a fusion of L5 and S1 bones in my spine, which means there are certain movements I will never be able to do. Right. So I can either fixate on them. It's like, those are the reasons that it's going to be hard, or those are conditions that I'm going to incorporate into the best I can do. So, and I didn't hear in Nova's question any sort of self-pity, but I'm just sort of listening for that in myself, that we all have struggles, mm-hmm. and we all have strengths. And so to focus on the strengths, and the struggles are real, the obstacles, the challenges are not, we're not saying, pretend they don't exist or mantra them or away, but they're part of life, and move forward without letting them define you.
Yeah. Thank you. Also, Nova, you don't have to do it alone. Get support. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. Any new skill can be learned most effectively with a teacher or an ally to support you on the journey. And so you're in the right place if you're here with us. Whole Life Club is an amazing resource for folks who are in this journey and want to keep going and keep making progress. We also have a course, Plant Powered and Thriving, that my dad and I teach. You can find it on our website. We have a program called the 14-Day Accelerator that really helps get going on a plant-based path. And we just launched it recently. It's been getting tremendous response. There's also lots of great books out there, summits, resources. The key thing is take advantage of wisdom and a steady hand from folks who can help walk you through the journey, so you can enjoy it and have some confidence that you're doing it right. Because we live in a toxic food culture. And so it takes a conscious resourcing to get on the right path. Like if you're driving somewhere, you need a map or a GPS. You can't just, and if you haven't been there before, you can't just set out in your car and expect to wind up at your destination, right? So get some guidance, get some resources. Over time, you'll get fluent. Your way. You might not need external resources, but when you're getting started, it's really important to have a map or a guide to show you how to get there. Catherine said, I know I need to walk more, i.e. every day, to keep my bones strong, but I always find reasons or excuses not to start. Any suggestions on how to get out of my own way and do what I know I should be doing is appreciated. Touched on this a bit earlier, but anything specific for Catherine?
Well, so I would laser focus on the word need, right? So when my clients tell me they need to do something, have to do something, or should do something, I know that there's an internal conflict that they've somehow superimposed an external demand on themselves. And I don't know about you, Ocean, but whenever anybody tells me I have to do something, I immediately don't want to do it. Right?
Yeah.
No matter what it is, no matter how reasonable, how good it is, like, oh yeah, you're not the boss of me. So I would encourage her to ask herself, do I want, try the sentence, I want to walk more, and see what happens. I'm not saying you have to do that or you have to want to, but just as an experiment, replace have to with want to. I want to walk more, and instead of but, and, right? Because but negates what happened before. But it's like, I want to walk more and I find it difficult to get motivated in the moment. All of a sudden, that very similar construction can lead to a whole new set of insights. I want to walk more, and I not at that moment, or not after that meal, or not by myself, or not with this pain in my hip.
Yeah.
So then I think, well, if I want to do something, right? Like if I want to eat that donut, the conversation's over. I'm going to find a way. I'm going to crawl over broken glass to get to Krispy Kreme,
Yeah.
So focus on the like, why do you want to? Like, let it be a choice.
Yeah.
Let it be your agency as opposed to an obligation, and let it be an opportunity. Yeah. Like what I learned this lesson from a guy who, I didn't know him well, but he was sort of an online friend. He was involved in an accident on the New York subway, paralyzed from the waist down. And then he posted like a year later, he's back at the gym after how many operations. And he's able to move his body again and lift weights and use a wheelchair. And the thrill, the excitement that he had over, I get to do this again. And I was like, wow. Like I think of it like, oh, I got to go do this. Like think about the incredible privilege of our bodies, the pleasure we get, the movement, the power, and let that marinate a little bit to kind of counterbalance this feeling like, oh, I should be doing something and I'm bad because I don't do it.
Yeah. Thank you. Carrie said, it's not unlike a previous question, but she said, how can I support my husband to make changes in his health? He was diagnosed with diabetes insipidus 2 years ago, lost weight and started eating better. He eats mostly vegan, but has a terrible habit of snacking late at night. I'm a health coach myself, but he doesn't want to hear from me about what to do. He still needs to lose about 20 pounds. We have a family wedding in May, and I know he wants to be fit. I get anxiety hearing him snack so late and knowing that if I say something, it will be nagging. Any suggestions on how to support his behavior change without nagging would be greatly appreciated. We've got two things here: behavior change without nagging and late night snacking.
Yeah. Well, if you're a health coach, like you've got to retire in the family. Like I'm a health coach. I do not, whatever I try to coach my family just doesn't work well in that role. Like I can be a curious ally, but I'm not going to take him through a coaching process. So, you can say, hey, again, as you said, like this scares me. And I find myself wanting to nag you when I hear you snacking at night. And I know that you say you don't want to do it because of the wedding, because you want to lose weight and you want to be healthy. How can I support you?
Yeah, that's great. Like, what do you want from me here? Like just having a really heartfelt, I don't want to nag you. I love you. I want you to get what you want in your life. How can I support you? Like, what do you actually want from me here? And then if he says like, chill out and don't say a thing, like listen to that,
Yeah.
But then ask, and do you have any suggestions? Is there any way beyond that, anything active you want from me at all?
Yeah. I mean, I can guarantee you that being nagged does not reduce the urge to snack.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it does, when I feel nagged, I do not make better decisions.
Yeah, because we're back to like our sovereignty is at stake, and when choosing between freedom and sovereignty combined with a pleasant taste versus capitulating, to a nag, like obviously it's an easy choice for most brains, Yeah. And the love is real and the concern is real. And so back to that, like, what does your husband want?
Right. And asking about, the big outcome.
Yeah.
Because the short-term outcome is I want this snacking junk food right now.
Yeah.
Right. But again, when we expand our time horizon and we say like, what do you really want? And someone comes up with like, here's what I really want. Their brain starts immediately processing, how do I get that thing that I just said I wanted?
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. All right. Next, we heard from Monica, who said, since COVID started, my husband has worked from home. We do not have an office. Therefore, he does his work either at a desk right at the bottom of the basement stairs, on the living room couch, or at the dining room table. It's an open living concept. I work in early education. I am out of the house in the morning. The rest of the day, I quietly float around wherever and whatever my husband does. His work schedule and needs always come before whatever I want and have to do. I have to admit, I have a caretaker personality, and I've always put him and our kids first. But now with this situation, it's 24/7, and it doesn't feel like a good thing anymore. How do I break this habit of putting others first? And how do I learn to allow myself to listen and do what I want?
So the first thing I would extend is just tremendous compassion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a hard situation that human beings are not meant to be in. Right. So just to take a breath, Monica, and just appreciate how hard things have been, and how much you are suffering, and how hard you have been working to make this work. Like, that's remarkable. So I say, like, what's the cost of not putting yourself first? Like, why do you want to put yourself first? Like, it seems like, your kids and your husband are getting what they need. You're surviving. Like, what's at stake here? Why, if you continue to not put yourself first, what do you see happening that you don't want to happen? So I just want to get real clear on what the stakes are. Because for most people, putting others first ends up, not putting others first. Mm-hmm. Right? Because if I put you first and I take care of all your needs, and I end up being snarky and resentful and withholding, or everything is strings attached, like, I take care of your needs, Ocean, and one day you don't say thank you, and then I have a conniption, and then, right, like, taking care of other people requires taking care of ourselves. And that's sort of a platitude. Like, you got to plug in the iPhone before it'll, work for you. Mm-hmm. But then to say, like, what's one thing? What's one thing that you'd want to change that would allow you to take care of yourself? And it could be either the most important thing, like this would have the biggest impact, or it could be the easiest thing. This is something I could do right now, and nobody would even notice but me, or it might be a symbolic thing or a random thing. Mm-hmm. But start experimenting. And because, like, you eat the donut and it tastes good and you get feedback. So we want positive reinforcement, the dopamine from doing something that is going to help.
Yes.
So is there a negotiation with your husband around, here's the thing I want to do for myself, and it may inconvenience you a little bit, but it will bring great benefit to me? And have that conversation and ask your husband, like, how do you feel about me putting everyone's needs first? First of all, do you agree that that's what I do? Mm-hmm. Right? And if I do, what's the effect on you? Do you like it? Mm-hmm. And chances are he'll say, I hate it. I feel guilty. I feel like you're always too tired to have fun. Mm-hmm. All right. I feel like you get sick a lot and I have to take care of it. Like, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Again, let's make friends with reality.
Yeah.
Right? Like, get it out in the open rather than because in our own minds, we create scenarios and we have perspectives that may be completely separate from what's really going on for someone else.
Yeah. That's some good advice right there. Another piece is for a lot of people who are afraid of letting a partner down, like that conversation where you say, hey, how is this for you, is an important one. And if but it also may be when these patterns get entrenched that a partner gets very used to it and just sort of takes it for granted, and suddenly you could ruffle some feathers, and you may have fear of ruffling feathers and causing distress in the system. causing distress to someone you love. And so it could be beneficial to talk about it outside of the moment. So rather than at a moment when you have different desires and you choose that moment to push without context, talk about it when you have a little more space, over dinner or some other time, and say, hey, could we have a heart-to-heart talk? I want to talk about something, let's find a good time for it. And then sit down and talk about it and say, here's this pattern I notice. I'd love to talk about it on a deeper level, because often it's easier when you're not triggered to talk about strategies for how to deal with a trigger rather than coming up with it when you're in the moment, right? The best time to repair a roof is when the sun's shining, not when it's pouring rain, and I think a lot of us try to solve problems when we're in the peak of them, when we're inflamed, and then it doesn't go well. And then we give up. But it's better to come up with a strategy when you're settled and calm in your nervous system. And then when you're in the peak of a challenge, you remember and you got a reference point for how to handle it.
Right. Yeah, that's really important and beautiful advice. And the other thing I would say is that you may have to set boundaries that someone else doesn't like. And that's also part of life. I don't know, it's been 10 years now since you've been running a real business, right? And you started out as a youth activist, I just want to make the world better. And I'm imagining there were plenty of times, and may still be plenty of times, that you have to negotiate in a way that someone else doesn't get what they want because you have constraints and vision. And I'm curious, in terms of your own development, was that hard to learn, to kind of advocate for yourself and for a specific mission when it may lead to some ruffled feathers?
But the key thing is that when we have a clear goal, then we can become fiercely committed to that goal. And so, there's lots of no's involved in any big yes, but when your focus is on the outcome you're going towards, then you can become even ruthless towards that, hopefully kindly and lovingly so, but with a clear direction. So, we want to change the way the world eats at Food Revolution Network. We want healthy, ethical, and sustainable food for all. That's a big vision. It's going to take a lot to get there. And sometimes it means holding people accountable if they're not following through on a deadline or not doing what they said they were going to do, because we aren't going to get there if we don't deliver on what we said we were going to do or renegotiate. So those conversations have to happen within a loving spirit of purpose, right? And I think that's the context, is that it's all about the yes. It's all about what we're going towards, and how do we, as lovingly and healthfully and vibrantly as possible, create the conditions for success towards that mission. And at the same time, there are absolutely spots when it takes rigor, and it takes boundaries, and it takes accountability, and it takes clarity. And I was in the nonprofit sector for 20 years, and now I'm in the social profit sector is how I think of it, because Food Revolution Network is a business and we're also a mission, and we're trying to combine the two. And I think that the not-for-profit sector tends to have a lack of rigor. It has a big heart, but lack of rigor. And then I think business tends to have a lot of rigor, but no heart. It's all about the so-called bottom line. And we've made money more important than human life or the survival of life on earth, right? Human dignity, and people will make a killing instead of making a living. And so I'm interested in trying to reshape that and reframe that, so we have a loving, harmonious, ethical way of engaging with each other and the world. And also at the same time, hopefully we can make a good living that can help all of our team to see this as a career path for themselves. And even the financial success of the company isn't about getting rich for somebody. It's about creating an engine that can help fuel attracting top talent, so that we can more effectively accomplish our goal, which is to change the way the world eats, right? And if people can see this as not just a fun hobby on the side while they do their real career, but the really cornerstone of their life work, then we're going to attract people who are passionate and up to something and who have real skills to bring to the table. So that's the vision we're going towards in Food Revolution Network. And sometimes, that takes boundaries and rigor that was all too often absent in a nonprofit context, in my experience. Now, obviously, there are a lot of nonprofits that have a lot of rigor, but we got a little bit mushy, I think, at times, because we were so all about the mission. We didn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and it's not that I want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I do want to actually get something done, and I'm willing to bear the consequences of that when necessary. And I want a team that is willing to also.
That's such a great answer. That's so helpful to me in thinking about it. Like agreeing on the big goal, and every big yes involves lots of no's. So I would say, bringing it back to Monica and her family, like, do you and your husband have a big yes? Like something like what you want to build in a relationship and as a family. And if you agree on that, then that's the context with which you negotiate everything else. And there is going to be no's involved, and both, sacrifices and compromise, but hopefully not compromise of the big yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Obert said, why is it when I lose 4 or 5 pounds and feel really good that something happens within to sabotage myself? It's as if my mind says, get those pounds back on. When I do, I start all over again to lose them. Crazy, but I know this happens a lot. Any thoughts for Obert?
Okay. Well, so I would, if I were coaching Obert, I would say, tell me more about something happens.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is it like you're sleeping and the food starts like crawling, like from that scene from Fantasia, where like the food is like crawling and going up your chin and into your mouth, and you wake up and you've gained 5 pounds? Probably not, right? So we want to start with like clarity and agency. What are you doing? And if the goal is, okay, I just want to lose 4 or 5 pounds, then, because what he's describing is an oscillating system. So, okay, I want to lose those 5 pounds. Good. I've lost those 5 pounds. Now I have no more motivation, except I have that my previous motivation was I like this unhealthy food. So I'm going to go back there. And now and then I gain 5 pounds, and then I have the motivation to lose 5 pounds. So it's constantly oscillating back and forth. So one thing I would suggest is choose a goal that you're never going to reach. Like when you were a runner, when you were a competitive runner, Ocean, you weren't like, oh, well, I've just done a PR. I've just done a 3:10 marathon. So now I'm good.
I never did a 3:10 marathon, for the record. But okay, go on.
What was it? When you were 11, you ran a really fast marathon.
I ran 5 hours, but I did,
okay.
At 10,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you were more of a cross country guy?
Oh, I know. I did run for speed. Okay. I just didn't want anyone thinking I was a 3:10 marathon runner. That's all.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Editorial rigor. Okay.
No, I get the point. When you accomplish a goal, you look to the next goal. You keep going in any pursuit. Right. You're not like, oh, I did a good scale on the violin, so I'm done. I retire.
Right. So one thing, like the thing I'm most sensitive about weight is pull-ups. Like if I gain 5 pounds, I can't do a pull-up. Like I'm right at that edge. Mm-hmm. So I would say, like, instead of focusing on the weight, I want to focus, can I do 3 pull-ups? And part of that will mean I have to watch my weight. I can't let the pounds around the middle increase, because I'm just not strong enough. Mm-hmm. Or if it's going to be, I want to run, 30 seconds faster in my next 10K. We know that 10 pounds of extra weight is like an extra minute per mile. Right. So, or it's just, I want to do better at yoga, or I want to be happy. Like pick something where you can continually chase better, because it's like maintenance is extremely hard in an environment that isn't in concert with that maintenance. Like if we all eat the way we want to eat, we will all be overweight. Mm-hmm. Right. Because the United States produces 4,000 calories per person per day.
Right.
And they're trying to get us to buy it and eat it. So I would say if you're stuck in oscillation, choose something that you can continually move towards.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And again, I'll refer back to Susan Pierce Thompson's work, because there is some fascinating psychology and neuroscience on how the brain responds to weight when it gets a set point for what it thinks we should weigh, even if it's 300 pounds. it will gravitate towards that and literally feel like we're starving to death if we get below a certain amount, and suck us right back there. So a lot of people have a certain neuroscience to where their body sets around weight. And so again, if you check out Bright Line Eating's work, I think you'll find some resources if you do feel stuck there that could be helpful in understanding and actually creating lasting breakthrough long term. Howard, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I just want to thank you for all of your wisdom and insights. And do you have any last words you want to share on this topic before we wrap up today?
Yeah, just like make this fun. Like I was thinking about Nova, who said she's 81 years old and is now just approaching this. Like, look upon this as a fun curriculum, like an adventure. And that can be true for all of us. Like we all tend to approach this from a place of I'm not good enough, I'm sick, I'm fat, I'm unhappy. We like from a deficit place. Most of us come to healthy living from a deficit. And as quickly as possible, like being part of your community and seeing, you and your dad and the other members really leading with joy, leading with generosity, leading with mission, like let yourself be infected, right? We've spent 2 years now trying not to be infected. Like, let's get infected by other people's enthusiasm and really like work hard to make this as fun and joyful as possible. And when you catch yourself thinking those negative thoughts, those I should thoughts or what's wrong with me thoughts, feel them, be compassionate with yourself, and remind yourself of the joy that you're going for, of why you're really doing this.
Yes.
Like that's joy is a much better fuel than fear.
Yes, it truly is. Howard, thank you so much again for your wisdom, your insights, your work. We've been talking here with Howard Jacobson, PhD, executive coach, health coach, best-selling author and co-author, and also host of the Plant Yourself podcast. And also, I think, the founder of the WellStart Health Coaching Academy. Howard, such a privilege, such a pleasure. I wish you a beautiful day.
You too, Ocean. Thanks so much.
Thank you. When it comes to cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, heart disease, and other chronic illness, what really matters isn't how many books you read, how many webinars you attend, or how much you know. What really matters at the end of the day is what you eat and how you live. The science has given us what we need to know. Now it's time for action. It's time to implement and optimize your healthy lifestyle. It's time to get results. It's time to say goodbye to confusion and hello to clarity. It's time to say goodbye to bad habits and hello to good ones. It's time to fall in love with foods that love you back. It's time to join a community that will support you in achieving your goals. It's time for Whole Life Club.